Frank Miller stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The signal patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen before. After 15 years working at NASA's Communications Center, he knew this wasn't space debris or a satellite malfunction. This was something else entirely. "Hey, can you take a look at this?" Frank called to his colleague across the room. Within hours, the quiet communications center transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Government officials, military personnel, and scientists crowded around monitors as the strange signal grew stronger. It wasn't random noise. It had structure, patterns, intent. 3 days later, the world got its answer. A massive ship, sleek and silver, appeared just beyond the moon's orbit. Earth had its first confirmed alien contact. "They're requesting to open communications," Frank said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. On screens across the world, the face of an alien appeared. It looked almost human, but with pale blue skin, large oval eyes, and no visible ears. It called itself Ambassadors Rec of the Xarian people, representatives of the Galactic Confederation. "We come in peace and cooperation," the alien said in perfect English, explaining they had analyzed Earth's broadcasts to learn the language. "Your world has reached a level of development that qualifies for initial contact." Within days, Diane Powell, the U.S. Secretary of State, found herself leading an emergency diplomatic team. The president had personally called her at 3 a.m. "They want to establish formal relations," he had told her. "They see us as a developing world with potential. Don't let them think we're pushovers." The first face-to-face meeting took place at a hastily prepared facility in Geneva. Ambassadors Rec and 3 other Xarians sat across from the human delegation. "Your planet is classified as Category 3 in our systems," Drek explained with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Technologically developing, but with interesting biological diversity. We propose a cultural exchange." Diane listened carefully, noting the slightly condescending tone in the alien's voice. "And what would this exchange involve?" she asked. "A team of your representatives would visit our homeworld, while our scientists conduct non-invasive surveys of your planet's ecosystems," Drek replied. "We find your wildlife particularly quaint." Sam Hudson hadn't expected to be pulled into an alien diplomatic crisis. As a marine biologist studying coral reefs in Florida, international politics wasn't his area. But when the government called asking for experts on Earth's ecosystems, his name had come up. "They seem particularly interested in our wildlife," Diane told Sam after bringing him onto the team. "Your job is to help coordinate their research visits and make sure they don't do anything harmful." Sam nodded, still trying to process that he was looking at actual aliens. "They don't seem very impressed with our animals," he observed after one meeting. "No, they don't," Diane agreed. "Ambassadors Rec call our apex predators simplistic and inefficient compared to life on other worlds." Over the next few weeks, agreements were signed. A team of 10 humans would travel to the Xarian homeworld as Earth's first extraterrestrial ambassadors. Meanwhile, 20 Xarian scientists would begin their survey of Earth's wildlife, starting with controlled environments like reserves and zoos. On the day before the human team was set to depart, Sam met with the lead Xarian scientist, a stern-looking female named Science Director Krill. "We will begin with your preserved natural areas," Krill said, examining her datapad. "These national parks should provide adequate sampling of your primitive ecosystems." Sam bit his tongue at the word primitive. "Just remember that some of our wildlife can be dangerous if you don't take proper precautions." Science Director Krill made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We have studied planets with sulfuric acid atmospheres and predators 3 times the size of your largest animals. I assure you, we can handle whatever your little planet has to offer." Sam smiled politely, but something told him the aliens were underestimating Earth. He had spent his life studying its creatures and knew better than most how perfectly adapted they were to survive in their environments. The Xarians would learn soon enough. Lucy Grant checked her bags one last time. As an anthropologist who had spent years studying different human cultures, she never thought she would be studying an alien one. The silver pin on her jacket marked her as part of Earth's first delegation to the stars. "Nervous?" asked Steve Bennett, who stood nearby. The former Army Ranger had been chosen as security for the human team. His calm eyes scanned the room constantly, a habit from his military days. Excited, Lucy replied with a smile. "Think about it. We're going to see another world." The team of 10 humans gathered in the launch area. Among them was Dr. Alan Wright, a xenobiologist who could barely contain his excitement. He carried more scientific equipment than personal items. "I've spent my whole career theorizing about alien biology," he told anyone who would listen, "and now I get to study it firsthand." The Xarian ship that would take them to the alien homeworld was sleek and silent. Inside, it was brightly lit with curved walls that seemed to glow from within. Ambassador Zrek greeted them with formal politeness. "The journey will take 14 of your Earth days," he explained. "You may experience some discomfort when we enter faster than light travel, but it passes quickly." As the humans settled into their quarters, halfway across the world, Science Director Krill led her team of Xarian scientists into San Diego Zoo. They moved with careful precision, recording data on every animal they encountered. "Such inefficient designs," Krill noted, watching a lion sleeping in the sun. "Primitive respiratory systems, limited sensory input, and they spend most of their time inactive." Her assistant, junior researcher Traz, seemed more impressed. "But they are perfectly adapted to their environment," he suggested. Krill made a dismissive gesture. "A simple environment creates simple predators. Wait until you see the engineered ecosystems of more advanced worlds." Over the next week, the Xarian research teams spread across Earth's wildlife reserves and protected areas. They observed elephants in Africa, tigers in India, and sharks in the Great Barrier Reef. Though they took careful notes and collected extensive data, they remained unimpressed. "Even your most dangerous predators are predictable," Science Director Krill told Sam Hudson during their daily report. "They follow simple patterns of behavior driven by basic needs." Sam tried to explain that this simplicity was deceptive. "Our animals have evolved over millions of years to be perfectly efficient in their environments," he said. "They don't waste energy on unnecessary adaptations." Krill merely nodded politely, clearly unconvinced. Meanwhile, in space, the human delegation adjusted to life aboard the alien vessel. Steve Bennett spent much of his time observing the Xarian crew, noting their strengths and weaknesses. They were technologically advanced, but physically less dense than humans, with thinner bones and less muscle mass. "They're adapted to a lower gravity environment," Alan explained when Steve pointed this out. "Their homeworld likely has less mass than Earth." On the 10th day of the journey, the humans were invited to the ship's observation deck. Through a massive viewing window, they saw a stunning sight, the Xarian homeworld. It was beautiful, with swirling white clouds over vast oceans of deep purple. "Welcome to Xaria," Ambassador Zrek said with pride. "A world of perfect balance and harmony." Back on Earth, the Xarian research team prepared for their first expedition into a truly wild area, Yellowstone National Park. Science Director Krill had chosen it for its diversity of large mammals and relatively untouched ecosystems. "We will conduct a 4-day observation of predator-prey dynamics," she informed her team. "Pay special attention to the behavioral patterns of the local apex predators." Ranger Joe Simmons had been assigned as their guide. He had 20 years of experience in the park and knew its wildlife better than most. "Just remember," he warned as they prepared to set out, "stay at least 100 yards away from bears and wolves. These animals are wild and unpredictable." Dr. Vessa, the Xarian zoologist, smiled politely. "We have encountered far more dangerous creatures on other worlds, Ranger Simmons. Your concern is noted but unnecessary." As they headed into the wilderness, junior researcher Traz noticed dark clouds gathering over the mountains ahead. "Will the weather affect our expedition?" he asked. "It's just a little rain," Ranger Simmons replied. But it might make the wildlife more active. None of them realized that this simple change in weather would lead to an encounter that would forever change how the galaxy viewed Earth and its inhabitants. Morning mist hung low over Yellowstone's Lamar Valley as the Xarian research team set up their equipment. Rain had fallen overnight, leaving the air fresh and the ground soft. Perfect tracking conditions, according to Ranger Joe Simmons. We've had reports of a grizzly sow with cubs in this area, Joe explained, pointing to a map on his tablet. We'll keep well away from their territory. Dr. Vesa adjusted her scanning device. I would prefer to observe your apex predators up close. Our protective gear can withstand forces much greater than an Earth animal could generate. Joe shook his head firmly. That's not how we do things here. Safety first, for both people and wildlife. Science Director Krill made a note in her datapad. Human excessive caution. Likely evolutionary response to living among predators they cannot control. The team moved through the valley, recording plant samples and observing herds of elk in the distance. Junior researcher Traz seemed genuinely fascinated by the biodiversity, taking more samples than required. The interconnectedness of this ecosystem is remarkable, he told Joe. Each species seems perfectly balanced with the other. Joe smiled. That's what makes Yellowstone special. It's one of the most complete ecosystems left on Earth. By midday, they had recorded data on wolves, coyotes, and various bird species. The Xarians remained unimpressed with Earth's predators, finding them simplistic compared to creatures they had studied on other worlds. Your wolves hunt in packs because they're individually weak, Dr. Vesa noted after watching a wolf pack from a distance. On Crawl 6, the apex predators hunt alone and can take down prey 10 times their size. Joe had stopped trying to defend Earth's wildlife. The aliens would believe what they wanted to believe. After lunch, the team split into 2 groups to cover more ground. Science Director Krill led one team toward a ridge where eagles had been spotted nesting. Dr. Vesa took Traz and another researcher to study the vegetation near a small stream. Joe went with Dr. Vesa's group, still uneasy about letting the aliens wander on their own. The scanner shows a large heat signature just beyond those trees, Traz said, pointing to a grove of aspens near the stream. Could it be one of your large herbivores? Possibly a moose or elk, Joe replied. Let's approach quietly and... Dr. Vesa was already moving forward, adjusting her recording device. I'll get a better scan. Joe hurried after her. Wait, you need tow. A loud crashing sound came from the trees, followed by a deep, rumbling growl that made the air vibrate. Joe froze, immediately recognizing the sound. Back away slowly, he whispered urgently. It's a grizzly. Too late. A massive female grizzly bear emerged from the trees, standing nearly 8 feet tall on her hind legs. Behind her, 2 cubs watched cautiously. The bear's small eyes locked onto the strange blue creatures standing before her. Dr. Vesa stood her ground, fascinated by the animal. Remarkable specimen. The scanner shows muscle density far greater than predicted. Don't move, Joe hissed. She sees you as a threat to her cubs. Traz seemed to understand the danger before Dr. Vesa. Perhaps we should retreat as the human suggests. The bear dropped to all 4s and huffed, a warning sign Joe knew all too well. We need to back away now. No sudden movements. Dr. Vesa finally seemed to grasp the situation, but instead of backing away, she raised her protective shield. A thin, transparent field of energy that surrounded her body. My shield can withstand impacts up to. The bear charged. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, Traz couldn't clearly remember the sequence of events. The grizzly hit Dr. Vesa with such force that the alien's shield technology shattered like glass. Nearly 1,000 pounds of muscle, bone, and fury slammed into the Xarian scientist, sending her flying backward. Joe fired his bear spray while yelling to scare the animal away from her cubs. The bear hesitated, then retreated back to her young. When they reached Dr. Vesa, her blue skin had turned pale gray. Her exoskeleton, A feature of Xerian biology they hadn't previously revealed to humans was cracked in multiple places. Impossible, she whispered as Traz tried to stabilize her injuries. The force, inconceivable for a non-engineered species. Mary Thompson, the wildlife veterinarian on call for the park, arrived by helicopter 30 minutes later. As she worked alongside the Xerian medical team to save Dr. Vesa, she overheard Traz sending an urgent message to the Galactic Confederation. "Revise Earth Wildlife Threat Assessment immediately," he was saying, his voice shaking. Category 5, possibly 6. Natural predators exceed all safety projections. In space, unaware of what had happened, the human delegation prepared for their first steps onto an alien world. News of the bear attack spread quickly through the Galactic Confederation. Within 3 days, a new ship arrived in Earth orbit. This one was larger, with distinctive red markings on its hull. It carried a specialized team of xenobiologists and security experts, led by Commander Drek. Commander Drek had visited over 30 dangerous worlds in his long career. His gray skin was marked with scars, and one of his 4 eyes had been replaced with a cybernetic implant. He looked out the viewport at the blue planet below. "So this is Earth," he said quietly. "It doesn't look like a death world." High Counselor Vex appeared on the ship's communication screen. The Xerian research team severely underestimated the wildlife. Dr. Vesa nearly died from her encounter with a single non-sentient predator. Drek nodded. "We'll conduct a proper assessment. No more mistakes." On Earth, Dr. Susan Morgan waited nervously at the landing site for the new alien team. As one of Earth's leading zoologists, she had been assigned to work with them after the Yellowstone incident. "They're calling Earth a death world now," she told Sam Hudson, who stood beside her. "What does that even mean?" "It means they're scared," Sam replied, "and maybe a little more respectful." The new alien team was different from the Xerians. They wore heavy armor and carried sophisticated equipment. Commander Drek introduced himself with formal politeness, but none of the condescension the Xerians had shown. "We need to understand your world's true threat level," he explained to Susan. "The Confederation has safety protocols for different planetary classifications." Over the next week, the new assessment team visited wildlife sanctuaries across Earth. Unlike the Xerians, they approached Earth's animals with caution and respect. They measured the bite force of crocodiles, recorded the speed of cheetahs, and analyzed the venom of various snakes and spiders. Pete Garcia, a wildlife photographer assigned to document the aliens' research, noticed their growing amazement. "They seem surprised by everything," he told Susan as they watched the aliens testing the strength of an eagle's talons. "I think they're used to worlds where predators are rare," Susan replied. "Earth has predators everywhere, even in the oceans and the air." Commander Drek was particularly interested in Earth's apex predators. After watching footage of killer whales hunting, he turned to Susan with all 4 of his eyes wide. "Your oceans contain pack hunters that coordinate attacks on creatures larger than themselves," he said, his voice revealing his disbelief. "And humans regularly enter these waters for recreation." Susan nodded. "People surf, swim, and dive in the ocean every day." "Remarkable," Drek murmured. Meanwhile, the human delegation on the Xerian homeworld was learning about Earth's new classification. Lucy Grant was in a meeting with alien scientists when one of them mentioned it. "Your planet has been reclassified as a Class 9 death world," the scientist said casually. "Only 3 other known planets have such a designation." Lucy nearly choked on her drink. "I'm sorry, what?" "Earth is dangerous." The scientist blinked in surprise. "Of course. Your world has extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, active tectonic plates, and some of the most aggressive non-sentient life forms in the charted galaxy. The fact that your species evolved there explains much about your physiology." Back on Earth, the assessment team had moved to the African savanna. They watched from a safe distance as lions took down a zebra. The predator-to-prey ratio on this planet is significantly higher than standard habitable worlds, one scientist noted. High Counselor Vex received daily reports from Commander Drek. With each new piece of information, his concern grew. During a secure conference with other Confederation leaders, he played footage of a honey badger fighting off a pride of lions. The smaller animal has no right to survive such an encounter, he explained. Yet it not only survives but drives away predators many times its size. This defies all known ecological principles. The Council voted unanimously to establish special protocols for Earth contact. Some members suggested a quarantine, but others saw opportunity. A species that evolved on such a world could be valuable allies, one counselor noted, or dangerous enemies. As Susan showed Commander Drek footage of wolves hunting in winter, she noticed him watching her rather than the screen. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "I'm trying to understand," he replied, "how your species could evolve on this planet yet appear so peaceful." Susan smiled. "Appearances can be deceiving, Commander. That's something predators and prey both learn on Earth." Despite Commander Drek's warnings, the Confederation Science Council voted to launch a full research expedition into one of Earth's most biodiverse regions, the Amazon rainforest. Captain Dren, an ambitious Xarian researcher, volunteered to lead the mission. "The preliminary data is fascinating," Captain Dren told his team as their ship entered Earth's atmosphere. "But to truly understand this planet, we need to study its most complex ecosystem." Dr. Linda Baker waited at a small airstrip at the edge of the Amazon. As an entomologist who had spent 15 years studying rainforest insects, she knew the dangers the aliens would face. "They have no idea what they're getting into," she told Greg Patterson, their local guide. Greg had grown up in a village near the rainforest and had worked as a guide for scientists for over 20 years. "Most outsiders don't," Greg replied with a shrug. "The forest has its own ways of teaching." The alien research vessel landed smoothly on the airstrip. Captain Dren emerged first, followed by 7 other researchers, including Scientist Mull, a xenobiologist specializing in comparative ecosystems. They wore lightweight armor and carried advanced equipment. "Welcome to the Amazon," Linda greeted them. "Did you bring the supplies I recommended?" Captain Dren gestured to their equipment. "We have everything we need. Our technology is far more advanced than your list suggested." Linda and Gray exchanged glances but said nothing. Their journey began the next morning. The plan was to travel by boat up the river, then hike to a research station deep in the rainforest. The aliens marveled at the density of life around them. "Our scanners are detecting over 500 different species within 50 meters, Scientist Mull reported, adjusting his instruments. "This exceeds the biodiversity of most garden worlds." By midday, the first problems appeared. The aliens' sensitive skin began to react to the bites of mosquitoes and other insects that somehow penetrated their protective fields. "Impossible," one researcher complained, examining a swollen bite on his arm. "These are simple insects. How are they breaching our barriers?" "Evolution," Linda explained. "Mosquitoes have had millions of years to perfect blood extraction. They can detect the thinnest parts of your defenses." Captain Dren dismissed her concerns. "A minor inconvenience. Our medical tech can handle it." The next day brought new challenges. Heavy rain caused their electronic equipment to malfunction despite its supposed waterproofing. The humid air seemed to seep into everything. When they tried to set up camp, they discovered a colony of army ants marching through their chosen site. "We'll simply use sonic repellers," Captain Dren declared, activating a device that emitted a high-frequency pulse. The ants paused briefly, then continued their march, completely unaffected. "These creatures have no audio receptors as we understand them," Scientist Mull observed with fascination. "They feel vibrations through the ground." Greg helped them relocate to a safer spot. "The forest is always listening, always adapting," he told them. "Nothing works quite the way you expect here." On the third day, the expedition encountered a group of poison dart frogs, tiny, brightly colored amphibians no bigger than a thumb. "Such vivid coloration," Scientist Mull remarked, reaching to scan one. Linda grabbed his arm. Don't touch. One frog contains enough poison to kill 10 men. The aliens stared at the tiny creatures with new respect. How can something so small be so deadly? Captain Dren asked. That's the Amazon, Greg replied. Size doesn't determine danger here. That night, as they sat around their camp, strange sounds echoed through the darkness. Howler monkeys roared, insects buzzed, and somewhere nearby, a jaguar growled. Your world never quiets, Captain Dren observed, his confidence finally showing cracks. On our worlds, predators are rare and managed. Here, they're everywhere. Linda nodded. The Amazon has more predators per square mile than most places on Earth, and that doesn't count the microscopic threats. Microscopic? Scientist Moole asked. Bacteria, parasites, fungi, Linda explained. Things you can't see, but that can kill you just as dead as any jaguar. Later that night, Captain Dren sent a private message to Confederation headquarters. Request extraction teams on standby. Earth's rainforest exceeds all hazard projections. Minimal technology functionality. Local wildlife constantly adapting to our presence. Recommend upgrading Earth's classification to highest danger level. As he finished the transmission, he noticed tiny spores growing on their equipment. Somehow, in just 3 days, the forest had begun to reclaim their advanced technology. Captain Dren shivered despite the heat. For the first time in his career, he felt like prey. Word spread quickly throughout the Galactic Confederation. Earth was not just another planet. It was one of the most naturally dangerous worlds ever discovered. Videos of Earth's wildlife circulated on alien networks, watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. Jack Morris sat across from 3 alien trade representatives on the Confederation space station. As Earth's newly appointed trade diplomat, he noticed how they leaned away slightly, keeping extra distance between themselves and the human from the Death World. Your request for mining rights on Mars seems reasonable, the lead negotiator said, but the price you're asking is quite high. Jack smiled. Perhaps, but your miners will be working safely in our solar system, protected by humans who are used to dealing with far more dangerous environments than the Martian surface. The aliens exchanged glances. Yesterday, they had watched footage of human freedivers swimming with great white sharks. The week before, they had seen humans handling venomous snakes with simple leather gloves as protection. Your terms are acceptable, the lead negotiator said quickly. On the Confederation military station Oran 7, Admiral Klex reviewed reports about human physical capabilities. The Admiral's species had evolved on a low-gravity world, with bodies that were tall and slender. They excelled at technology, but were physically fragile compared to many species. These humans can continue functioning with multiple bone fractures, the Admiral told his officers. They can survive blood loss that would kill most sentient species. Their pain tolerance is nearly off our charts. Are they a threat? One officer asked. Potentially, Admiral Klex replied. But they seem more interested in trade than conquest. For now, we watch and learn. Karen Mitchell found herself in an unusual position. As a sociologist, she had been studying alien cultures. Now, aliens were studying her. She sat in a Confederation research facility, while scientists from 6 different species monitored her vitals. Please lift this weight, a researcher instructed. Karen easily lifted the metal bar. The aliens murmured in surprise. Is something wrong? She asked. That weighs the equivalent of 90 Earth kilograms, the researcher explained. Most species from worlds with your gravity cannot lift that much. Karen laughed. I work out, but I'm not exceptionally strong for a human. Our weightlifters can handle 3 times this much. News of human capabilities spread through merchant networks. Merchant Ziv, a shrewd trader from a species known for their business skills, saw opportunity where others saw danger. He arranged a meeting with Earth's wildlife conservation authorities. I propose a guided tour service, he explained to the skeptical officials. Wealthy Confederation citizens would pay enormous sums to safely observe Earth's predators. The profits would fund conservation efforts. The officials were surprised but interested, as long as there's no harm to the animals or their habitats. One said. Of course not, Merchant Ziv assured them. My clients are interested in observation only. They find your world's natural danger exciting. On the Confederation High Council, debates raged about how to handle Earth's unique status. Some counselors advocated for strict quarantine protocols to prevent Earth's dangerous life forms from spreading. Others argued that humans themselves were too valuable as potential allies to isolate. Their adaptive abilities are unmatched, one counselor pointed out. They can survive in environments that would kill most of us. Precisely why they should be contained, another countered. What if they decide to conquer rather than cooperate? Meanwhile, human physical capabilities became legendary. Stories spread about a human construction worker who survived falling 11 stories, or a human child who wandered in wilderness for days without food or water yet emerged unharmed. Some stories were exaggerated, but many were true. Humans could endure extreme temperatures, consume foods that would poison other species, and recover from injuries that would be fatal to most Confederation citizens. At a diplomatic reception, Admiral Klex approached Jack Morris with a glass of blue liquid. I've been studying your species, the Admiral said. Is it true humans routinely ingest poisons for enjoyment? Jack looked at his glass of whiskey and smiled. We call it alcohol. It's a social tradition. Fascinating, the Admiral replied. On my world, that amount of toxin would cause organ failure. Jack raised his glass in a toast. To different evolutionary paths. As he drank, the Admiral watched with a mixture of horror and respect. Humans were indeed built differently, forged by a world that showed no mercy to the weak. 6 months after Earth joined the galactic community, a new challenge emerged. The Vraks, a warrior race known for their fighting prowess, had been watching humans with growing interest. Unlike most Confederation species, the Vraks evolved on a high-gravity world with significant environmental dangers, though none as extreme as Earth's. Warlord Grak, leader of the largest Vraks clan, stood before the Confederation Council. His gray, armored skin and impressive height made him an intimidating figure. We formally challenge the humans to compete in the Trial of Worlds, he announced, as is our right when meeting a new species of potential warrior value. The council chambers erupted in murmurs. The Trial of Worlds was an ancient tradition, rarely invoked in modern times. It involved a series of competitions designed to test physical and mental abilities in various environments. This could be a diplomatic disaster, Diane Powell whispered to Jack Morris. Both had been called to the council as Earth's representatives. Jack nodded. Or an opportunity. Back on Earth, officials scrambled to understand the challenge and its implications. Julie Harper, a diplomatic advisor specializing in alien cultures, explained the situation to a hastily assembled team. The Vraks respect strength above all else, she said. They're not trying to start a war. This is how they establish relationships with species they consider worthy. What happens if we refuse? Asked a general. They'll assume we're weak and not worth their attention, Julie replied. We'd lose a potentially valuable ally. The decision was made to accept the challenge. Now they needed a champion. After reviewing countless candidates, they selected Daniel "Danny" Cole, a former MMA fighter with experience in multiple combat styles and exceptional survival skills. Danny had also served in special forces, giving him tactical training that went beyond mere fighting ability. Danny studied videos of the Vraks, noting their movements and fighting style. They're strong and fast, he observed, but they telegraph their moves. Too much confidence. The first competition took place on a desert moon orbiting a gas giant. The challenge: cross 30 miles of harsh terrain while being hunted by native predators. The Vraks champion, Throk, finished the course in 26 hours. Danny completed it in 23, using stealth tactics he had learned on Earth to avoid confrontations rather than fight every creature he encountered. Warlord Grak watched with narrowed eyes. The human uses trickery instead of strength, he commented to Julie Harper. On Earth, we call it strategy. she replied. Our predators taught us that direct confrontation isn't always the best approach. The second challenge took place in a gravity chamber, with force levels increasing gradually. The Vracs evolved for higher gravity than most species expected to dominate. Throck lasted until the chamber reached 3.2 times Earth normal gravity. Danny, his body conditioned by years of intensive training, endured until 3.1, nearly matching the Vracs despite coming from a lower gravity world. Impressive, Warlord Grak admitted. Few species can match us in gravity challenges. As the competitions continued, Danny won some and lost others. The score remained close. What surprised the Vracs most was not just Danny's strength or speed, but his adaptability and endurance. Where Throck would power through obstacles, Danny would find ways around them. When forced into direct competition, he paced himself, often coming from behind to win. After 6 challenges, the score stood even. For the final test, Warlord Grak announced they would compete in Earth's oceans. Your world has one true advantage, its deadly seas, he declared. We will test our champion against yours in this environment. Champion Throck looked uncomfortable for the first time. The Vracs were not natural swimmers, and Earth's oceans contained dangers unlike any in the galaxy. As preparations began for the final challenge, Danny spent hours in the Pacific Ocean, training with marine biologists who taught him about currents, pressure changes, and the behaviors of various sea creatures. Don't fight the ocean, a veteran diver advised him. Work with it. That's how we've survived Earth's waters for thousands of years. The night before the final challenge, Warlord Grak approached Danny. Why do you not fear our oceans? He asked. Even my champion, who has fought on 20 worlds, is concerned. Danny thought for a moment. I respect the ocean, but I grew up swimming in it. Humans have learned to live alongside Earth's dangers, not just fight them. Warlord Grak nodded slowly. Perhaps that is what makes your species truly formidable. Not just your strength, but your ability to adapt. As dawn broke over the Pacific, both champions prepared to enter the water. The galaxy watched, finally beginning to understand. The final challenge took place in the deep waters off Hawaii's coast. Alien ships hovered above the ocean, their sensors tracking the competitors below. The challenge was simple yet difficult. Reach a marker 1 mile deep, retrieve a token, and return to the surface, all while navigating one of Earth's most complex and dangerous ecosystems. Danny entered the water wearing only a wetsuit with minimal gear. Champion Throck wore a sealed environmental suit with advanced propulsion. They descended together, surrounded by cameras that broadcast the event to every world in the Confederation. At first, Throck took the lead, his suit's technology helping him cut through the water faster than Danny could swim. But as they went deeper, things began to change. Throck moved more cautiously, startling at every shadow and movement in the dark water. Danny moved with calm confidence, at home in an environment where humans had hunted and explored for thousands of years. A group of curious dolphins approached, swimming playfully around Danny. He reached out to touch one as it passed. Throck's suit sensors registered the dolphins as potential threats, causing him to waste precious energy evading them. The human interacts with the wildlife, Warlord Grak observed from the observation ship. He understands these creatures. Julie Harper nodded. Humans have studied Earth's oceans for generations. We've learned which animals are dangerous and which are friendly. As they descended deeper, they encountered a school of hammerhead sharks. Throck immediately activated his suit's defense systems, creating an energy field that kept the sharks at bay, but drained his power reserves. Danny simply remained still, watching the sharks pass without showing fear. Your champion doesn't defend himself, Warlord Grak said with concern. He doesn't need to, Julie explained. Those sharks aren't hunting. Danny can tell the difference between curious behavior and hunting behavior. It's something we learned growing up on Earth. The marker lay on the ocean floor, guarded by natural hazards, strong currents, limited visibility, and the crushing pressure of the deep. Throck reached it first, But as he grabbed his token, his suit's power levels dropped dangerously low. The pressure at this depth was more intense than his engineers had predicted. Danny arrived moments later. Despite having no powered suit, his body had naturally adjusted to the pressure changes. Years of free diving had trained his lungs and circulatory system to handle conditions that would kill most humans, let alone aliens. On the return journey, Throck's suit began to fail. Warning lights flashed as water seeped in. Danny noticed the Vrax champion struggling and made a decision that surprised everyone watching. Instead of continuing to the surface, he swam to Throck's side and helped stabilize him. Together, they began the ascent, Danny guiding them through currents that would carry them upward with minimal effort. When a curious sperm whale approached, Danny used hand signals to communicate their non-threatening presence, preventing what could have been a dangerous encounter. They broke the surface together, Danny helping the weakened Vrax champion onto the recovery platform. Applause erupted from the observation ships. 1 month later, Earth was formally recognized as a full member of the Galactic Confederation. President Beth Williams stood before the Council to accept Earth's membership insignia. The terms of Earth's membership included special provisions acknowledging its unique status as a Class 9 death world. Humans will serve as guides and protectors for Confederation citizens visiting Earth, the agreement stated. In return, Earth wildlife sanctuaries will receive galactic protection status. Scott Taylor, a former park ranger, found himself with a new job, training alien visitors on wilderness survival. His first class consisted of 12 different species, all eager to learn from someone who had grown up on the most dangerous known world in the galaxy. First rule of Earth, Scott told them, respect everything. Even the smallest creatures can be deadly here. Across the galaxy, research teams studied Earth life forms, hoping to understand how such diversity of dangerous species could evolve on one planet. Grand Scholar Vix published a groundbreaking study titled Evolutionary Pressure: The Making of Earth's Apex Predator, Humans. The first mixed human-alien deep space exploration vessel prepared for launch. Named Terra Audax, Bold Earth, it was commanded by pilot Nicole Rogers, a former test pilot who had grown up in the Australian outback. Earth taught us to be cautious but curious, she told her crew during their first briefing. Those lessons will serve us well in unexplored space. As the ship departed Earth orbit, it passed over the Serengeti, where dozens of alien tourist vessels hovered at safe distances, watching the great